Okay. Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I am Damon Martin.
And I'm Patrick Voorhees.
And Patrick, tonight we are diving back into your favorite horror franchise with a little remake from 2009. Yes, folks, tonight we are reviewing Friday the 13th.
Yes, Damon. Friday the 13th, released in February of 2009, starring Willa Ford as Chelsea, Ryan Henson as Nolan, Arlen Escarpeta as Lawrence, Ben Feldman as Richie, Juliana Gill as Bree, Jonathan Sadowski as Wade, Derek Mears playing Jason Voorhees, Aaron Yu as Chewie, Travis Van Winkle as Trent, Amanda Rigetti as Whitney Miller, Danielle Pennebaker as Jenna, and starring Jared Padalecki as Clay Miller. As you mentioned, Damon, written from characters based on Victor Miller and Damian Shannon, with a screenplay by Mark Swift and Mark Wheaton. Oh geez. There's a lot of names here on the story because Jason is a very storied thing, of course. Marcus Nispel directs Damon for a group of young adults who visit a boarded up campsite named Camp Crystal Lake, where they soon encounter the mysterious Jason Voorhees and his deadly intentions, with a budget of pretty big here, $19 million and a gross worldwide of $90,000. Damon,
Only $90,000?
excuse me, $90 million. Excuse me. Damon, we are back. We are back at Camp Crystal Lake. We couldn't stay away for long. Honestly, a lot of people, we had two Friday the 13th this year already. Um, Funny that there's two bad luck days in a year like 2026. Makes total sense. Um, and people were just like, "Are you guys going to do a Friday the 13th movie?" And we just had such a packed schedule. I had to be like, "We can't. We're reviewing this thing for the Friday the 13th. We can't. We're doing this other thing for Friday the 13th." And so finally, we've gotten around to adding another Friday the 13th to our cap. The remake is here, Damon, one of the more beloved remakes from the classic remakes. I mean, a lot of people seem to love the Texas Chainsaw remake. Very, very few people have I ever heard say they like the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, us included. No, we're not fans. But this one, Friday the 13th, a lot of people say this is the best Friday the 13th, period. What say you, Damon, as someone not really a fan of this franchise? Where do you put a Friday the 13th remake in your
Uh,
list?
Let me start, but just so everyone knows, we are full spoilers. This movie came out in 2009, so
Absolutely.
we're not holding back here. You know, I rewatched it tonight, and I've seen this movie probably now. I think this is probably my fourth or fifth time. I remember seeing it in 2009. I did see it in the theater when it came out. I think so. I'm pretty sure I did, and I know I saw it when it came out on like home video or whatever. I think I showed it to friends or whatever, and then I know I saw it again. Whatever. I know I watched it for just to kind of clear up the timeline. I probably watched it again for the first time in a few years. I watched about a year and a half ago because I wanted my girlfriend to see it because I was like, why don't you see this Friday the 13th, see if you like it? And then I watched it again tonight. And as I'm doing the research for this, because I hadn't honestly researched it before, you know, when I found out the writers, you know, Mark Swift and Damian Shannon, who did Freddy versus Jason, which it's a film you and I absolutely adore. I was like, okay, it makes a lot of sense. They kind of get the character, they kind of get the theme, and the fact that they wanted to make one movie that combined elements of all of the first four movies, which I think most hardcore Friday the 13th fans, not Patrick Garrett, because Part 7's his favorite, but most people would say those first four were the strongest of the original series.
Yeah.
You know, the first one had the great twist with it being Mrs. Voorhees, and then obviously Jason actually shows up in the second. Part 2 has one of my favorite twists with Jenny putting on the sweater and just confusing the hell out of Jason, pretending she's his mother. I still love that scene to this day. Part 3, which is 3D, not great, but that's where you get the hockey mask. And then Part 4, which probably still ranks number one for me. You get Corey Feldman in there. You get the brother coming to try to find his sister, which obviously elements of that are very much in this film. And there's actually a little bit more of a plot. Now, we talked about during our both on and off air, we've talked about the history of Friday the 13th and said, like, the big key with these movies is there's no plot. It's just people show up in the wrong place at the wrong time and Jason starts hacking them to death. Now, where I give 2009's remake credit is they tried to give this a plot. I'm not going to tell you it's the strongest plot. I'm not going to tell you it's the greatest story ever. But I was actually like, rewatching it, I was like, they tried. That sounds like I don't like this movie. Let me be clear about this right up front, Patrick. This is not a great movie, but it's a really good Friday the 13th movie. Now that sounds like I'm moving the dominoes here to try to make this make sense. It's like rewatching it tonight, I'm like, wow, like there's a lot of cheesy, bad moments in this movie, but that's kind of a staple of Friday the 13th. So, like, I don't know where I would rank it overall, but like, I love part four. I've come to really respect part seven. When we reviewed that on the show, I was like, I like this a lot better, and I remember liking it before. Now, if you want to consider Freddy versus Jason a Freddy or a Jason installment, I know you don't. You consider it more of a Freddy installment, but because Jason's in the title, I would say that's in that top list, and I would say Friday the 13th, 2009 is probably right. So top four for me, depending on how you want to rank it. But I think where they went right here is the idea they're like, we're going to combine elements from the four films that pretty generally everyone likes and kind of make it into one movie. And I think that's kind of why this one works.
The first four movies are one complete story. I think people forget that is that the first movie is what it is. It's kind of self-contained, and they never even thought they were going to do a sequel. And then when the demand was there to make the sequel, they went, "Oh shit, what do we do? Okay, what if it's her son coming back from the dead?" This is the 1980s, and they're striking while the iron's hot, and so it becomes Jason's story. Two through three is the story of a living Jason who is not dead, who is some sort of a swamp man who just kind of lives out by Crystal Lake. He's alive and well through those movies, and at the end of four, spoiler alert for part four, Corey Feldman puts a machete through his skull and he dies, and that's supposed to be the end. If you look at those first four movies, that's the complete trilogy. That's the story of a man who was getting revenge for the death of his mother, who herself was insane and killed a bunch of people for no good reason. And that was it. And I think, and we heaped so much praise on Damian Shannon and Mark Swift for what they did with Freddy versus Jason. And I think the big thing that we complimented there was they made the Freddy lore very easy to understand, very easy to follow. And even some of the best Nightmare movies make it tricky to go, how does this actually work? What is actually going on? They knew how to streamline it. And they really were just like, here's the rule set. Here's how things are going to work. They sort of do the same thing here. They waste no time in the opening credits. They give you the lore. They give you how Jason started, which is they just start with Pamela Voorhees swinging a machete at a camp counselor while Jason looks in the bushes and watches on, and that woman gets the jump on Pamela, beheads her, and there thus begins the lore of Jason Voorhees. And then you fast forward to this rather extended cold open of just some people that are in a camp and they're camping to go look for weed. And now this was the thing where I was like, now I'm realizing that Damian Shannon and Mark Swift must be potheads, because there's also a weed component to Freddy versus Jason. It's not as strong as in this movie. In this movie, it's literally part of the plot. It's literally part of the engine that moves the story along. But this first group of campers is out there to find some weed. This is in the days before weed was pretty much legal in every state. And so they were going to find this weed, they're going to dry it out, and they're going to sell it. And one of those campers is, I believe, Whitney. Yes, it's Whitney. Whitney is out there, and her boyfriend trounce off, and they're hanging out, and they stumble onto Crystal Lake, Damon. They stumble onto the old campgrounds. You don't do that. Everybody knows the rules. That's real easy. Jason, in his bag head, big reference from part two, in his bag head, lays waste to this group of people in what is one of my favorite overall sequences in the entire franchise. And I think that's why a lot of people give this movie a big credit, is that opening sequence is kind of flawless. Like when I was watching that, I was like, God damn, this is really good. I remember sitting in the theater with Schwink, a fellow Friday guy. Shout out to my brother Schwink. We sat there and that cold open just knocked us on our ass because it was kind of everything we were ever looking for in a great Jason movie in the first 15 minutes of a movie. Then things change a little bit. And then it turns over to a story because it ends on this, like, on the machete coming down on Whitney, but it cuts to black before anything happens. And then we cut to 6 weeks later.
6 weeks later, yep.
And this guy, Clay, played by genre favorite Jared Padalecki, who's from Supernatural. If you ever watched that show, I didn't. Long running show, very, very popular in the genre sphere. Jared Padalecki's Clay is looking for his sister, who was one of those campers who's been missing. Now, typical with any Friday the 13th movie, the people in this small town near Crystal Lake are just like, dude, give it a rest. People go missing here. We don't, we throw our hands up and we don't do shit. And the sheriff is trying, I give them credit here. They tried to make the sheriff halfway competent. He goes, I put my best guys on it. We're doing what we can, but people get lost out here and they never show up again. And don't go believe in all the little mysteries and lore you've heard. It's this shit happens. It happens everywhere. And it's true. People do get lost in our national parks, in our woods all the time, sadly, and they never show up again. That happens a lot. But he's not giving up, and he bumps into a group of weekenders. This is something that to me feels very Friday the 13th. A group of obnoxious weekenders, and I wanted to ask you, Damon, are all camping weekenders this obnoxious? And it's not just Friday the 13th. It's like every movie where a group of people are going to the woods for the weekend have to be the most annoying, most grating group of people. And that's the people that Clay has to deal with. And the one nice woman, Jenna, in the group takes a liking to Clay and is just like, oh, he's looking for his sister. We should help him out. Everybody else on there are douche level 10. What is it, Damon? You've done a lot more camping than me. What is it about we're going to the woods for the weekend that make people absolute douchebags?
I don't think in reality it is that way, but here's the one thing I took away. And I'm being honest. I'm not like people like give your honest assessment. Like my honest assessment is this is not a great movie, but for Friday the 13th, it's a pretty good movie. But the one trope that happens in almost every single Friday the 13th movie when they go to Camp Crystal Lake, when the unassuming campers show up there and get slaughtered by Jason Voorhees, why? And this is not just this film. This is, I mean, you're the Friday fan, so I'm kind of turning the question back on you a little bit. Why does every person who writes a Friday the 13th script feel the need, not that the campers are douchebags? That happens occasionally. I think it's a little overstated in that case because you're right. They always seem like douchebags. Like, why? Here's my biggest problem. They never write these people like they actually like each other. Like, these people, none of these people look like they would be friends. And Trent, which I'm not, by the way, I'm not knocking. The actual actor's name is Travis Van Winkle. I was like, you should have just had him called Travis. That sounds like the ultimate waspy name ever, Travis Van Winkle. He's like the biggest dick ever. He is literally like the biggest dick ever. He's a dick to his girlfriend. He's a dick to his friends, like everybody. And the one dude's a stoner, and one dude's like starting his rap label, but he wants to jerk off in the middle of the cabin, and like it's just the weirdest collection of friends. They don't like each other. They have nothing in common. They don't seem like they're friends at all. Like when Chewie breaks the chair and Trent freaks out on him, he's like, "I'll fix it, man. I'll fix it." Like they just don't seem like they even know each other, much less like each other. Now I understand if you get a big friend group together and, there's a couple outsiders here and there or whatever, but like generally speaking, you would imagine like the core 4, core 5, you'd be pretty close. If you're going to spend a weekend with people, like you'd be pretty close together. These people don't seem like they know each other, much less like each other. And I'm just like, that's a problem. Like, and it's not unique to this film, by the way. Like when we go back, like I think is it part 4, the one with Back to the Future dad? What's his name? Why am I forgetting his name?
Oh, Crispin Glover. He was
Glover.
in, I think he was in 4, yeah.
Yeah, like where you're like, they don't seem to really like each other very much. Like it just seems to happen over and over again. I'm like, can we have one of these movies where the group of campers actually look like they're friends? Because these people, once again, like, and I know that, I'm jumping around a lot here, but like Trent eventually, porks around on his girlfriend Jenna. But like Trent and Jenna, who are supposed to be the couple to start the movie, they don't even seem to like each other, and she definitely doesn't seem to like him, and he's just like trying to get in her pants. It's just, that's my, like, yes, you're right. They are ultimate douchebags for no reason of being douchebags. But even trumping that aspect of the camping trip, I'm like, these people don't even like each other. Like, why would you want to go anywhere with this group of people for like 3 days?
It seems that Damian Shannon and Mark Swift wanted to do something. And I remember talking about this with Schwink after we got out of the movies. They wanted very badly to be an 80s movie. They right down to that. Like they modernize everything about this movie. It's taking place in what is essentially 2009. They're not trying to hide that. But they're trying to make all the character archetypes like 80s archetypes, which I don't know if everyone was just sociopaths in the 70s and 80s, but it just seemed insane. Like, and I remember too, like in I can't remember which Nightmare on Elm Street it was, where I was like, why are they friends with Rod? All Rod is just a major asshole. Like, and they're miserable anytime he's with them, but yet he's with them the whole movie. And you're like, you don't get it. But the spirit of that, right? That what they're really trying to do is go, we want to give you fodder for Jason. We want to give you people that you want to see Jason slash. Now, I'll argue it's very easy to root for Trent to be slashed. I mean, he transcends even Friday the 13th. He's just a classic 80s douchebag. I mean, it is Revenge of the Nerds, it's Karate Kid. It's there's this archetype is all throughout the 80s of this sort of blonde-haired, square-jawed Chad who's just the biggest douche around, bullies everybody. Nobody really likes him, but yet everybody gravitates toward him like he's the goddamn sun. It's just something about that archetype. And it seems like the writers wanted to emulate that. And I think as much as we enjoyed it when we watched it, because it was great to just have another good Friday the 13th movie, we were like, but it is 2009. You can update this. You can make this different. And there's a category for that later on. So maybe we'll save the deeper dive of that for later. But it gets things going, basically. It's like, okay, we have the bodies now. And now we have people to root for. We have Clay, who's looking for his sister who went missing 6 weeks ago. And we have Jenna, who's clearly, despite her choice in men, a very nice person and is like, oh, I'll go help you. And the one thing I was like, it is crazy that this guy she just met, she gets on the back of his motorcycle and rides off out of nowhere. And I'm like, but she is dating Clay. So it just tracks on all levels. A, she doesn't want to be around Clay. B, she makes
Trent,
bad choices because she's.
You mean Trent? She don't want to be
I
around
mean, excuse me, Trent. Yes, she doesn't want to be around Trent. And B, she has a bad choice in men. So why not just get on a motorcycle with a random guy? Like it weirdly actually tracks for Jenna's character. And they go off and they go investigating. And during that time, in the spirit of any Friday the 13th movie, Jason begins to pick people off because they are stomping around his grounds and he doesn't like that. He's very territorial. Another thing that they created for this movie, which is something that I feel is always on the top of everybody's mind, which is how the hell does Jason teleport? Like he'll be chasing you, chasing you, chasing you, and then you turn around, he's not behind you, and then you turn back around, he's in front of you, and you're like, how the fuck did that happen? They went, I would call it the Christopher Nolan route, where they were like, we're going to give him an actual real reason why he can do this. And that real reason is he has this system of tunnels under the camp, and he can dip into that tunnel and sprint because he's very athletic. They established that very early on in the cold open. This Jason moves fast. He's a hulking, fast, very athletic and dangerous guy. So he jumps into those tunnels, he hustles around, and then he can pop up in anywhere around the lake. He's basically got lay of the land, and he's this sort of hunter. And anything that steps into his domain is fair game. So he starts picking off the weekenders. There's a myriad of kills. By the way, excuse me, 13 kills in this movie. And I can't remember if they wanted to do more or less kills. I can't remember what it was, but whoever was in charge said it has to be 13 kills because we're coming back for the first time ever and who knows how long. So we need 13 kills. And they're like, fine, we'll give you 13 kills. And so, but most of those kills are these day campers. There's a hillbilly that lives nearby who took some of the weed from Jason's weed farm because I don't know if he's a weed dealer, not quite sure. My point on all of this, when I bring all this up, is it's very much a plot-driven movie, which is not normally a thing you do in a Friday the 13th movie. And to this day, my least favorite movies in the franchise have always been really, really plot-driven. Like really, really like A to B to C needs to happen. And this is one of them. Now, it doesn't suffer the fate of the other ones, which is they were very poorly made and very poorly acted. That's not the case here. You have good actors. You have a very well-made movie, by the way, shot by Daniel Pearl, who shot the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and shot the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So Daniel Pearl's back, making it look great. It looks, and it's got that very Platinum Dunes 2000s look, like high contrast. Everybody's sweaty. All the, like everything looks like a music video. Marcus Nispel, who directed some of the Texas Chainsaw movies, directed this as well. It's got that look. It's got that vibe, but it's also got that plot. And it's just like, I don't know if the plot to me was ever that exciting. Like whenever they were just out searching around for Whitney, I was kind of bored.
Well, I want to mention this to you because you talked about jumping on the motorcycle. I want to go back to that real quick. You are a fellow Sons of Anarchy fan. That's one of the ways we eventually befriended one another was our shared love for that TV show. And funny enough, totally side story, Comic Con, San Diego Comic Con. I can't remember what year it was. I was actually at the Sons of Anarchy Media Day backstage, and I was hanging out, and I interviewed Kurt Sutter and Charlie Hunnam, all the crew, and they were waiting, and the Supernatural people were coming in next. And I was like hanging out in the hallway, and I actually met Jared Padalecki. He was a really nice guy, as he was like waiting for us to wrap up our Sons of Anarchy panel. So there's my Jared Padalecki story. Very nice guy. I met him, and yeah, really cool guy. Do you remember the scene from Sons of Anarchy season 1 when Jax and his crew are heading up north to patch in a new crew of bikers? And they stop at a gas station. This douchebag who owns like a Kawasaki, crotch rocket is like admiring the Harley, and he gets on it and he like slaps his girlfriend. Do you remember that scene? And then like Jax and Bobby Elvis show up and they beat the crap out of him, and the girl just jumps on the bike in the back of Jackson's bike and takes off. I was like, were they inspired by Friday the 13th, 2009? Because it's literally the same thing happens. Her douchebag boyfriend's like, bitch, come here, you're not going to do this. And then Jackson and Bobby beat him up and they take her on the bike and she goes with Jackson ran. Sorry, I just thought of that when you were describing that scene. I was like, I've seen this before in Sons of Anarchy. So sorry, I just had to throw that out there. I was like, oh my God, it's so similar. And by the way, I want to temper a little bit the expectation about good acting. I'd say it's a horror movie.
I mean, I'm just comparing it to pretty much anything that came before in Friday the 13th. Those are movies that you don't go to acting for.
I mean, when it comes to the plot, and one of my biggest problems with Friday the 13th is not having a plot of any kind. I'm not saying like they need to be, it needs to be the most intricate plot ever written. It needs to be, I don't want to know. I'm not going to, name a bunch of movies that have intricate plots. It doesn't need to be JFK or anything like it. It doesn't need that.
Please.
But I do enjoy like more, like I do lose interest in a movie that just like, a bunch of campers show up, Jason hacks them to death, and one person gets away. That is a trope as old as time. I get it. And you've said many times on the show, I don't want to misquote you, but basically the point of Friday the 13th is more about the kills, the creativity of the kills, and Jason killing people. It's not really about how they got there, what they're doing there, why they're there, and what the plot is. That's not really the point of these movies. And you're right. To a certain extent, I think you're absolutely right. But I think injecting plot into this movie, at least a little bit, and to their credit, I think the plot is like, if you're gonna create a plot of like, just full on, Christopher Nolan Inception level of like, oh my God, this is like, this guy really orchestrated a plot here at 10, and then 1 would be like, I don't know,
Terrifier.
Terrifier, yeah, Terrifier 1, literally, where it's just like, hey, let's show up and kill people. Friday the 13th 2009 ranks around a 3. They're not super high, but considering most of the Friday the 13th,
I'd give it a 5. I mean, I would give it a 5. They're looking for a missing person,
Yeah. So, but the idea that they try to inject something in there, some kind of story. You're right. It does drag a little bit when it's like, let's go look for Whitney, and to this day, like, and I can't believe I'm actually asking you this question because I feel like I know I'm right, but I'm just going to say it anyways. Jason keeps Whitney because she looks like his mother, because Correct. They find that locket, and her boyfriend very poignantly says at the beginning of the film, hey, this looks like you. And then suddenly she gets kidnapped and kept alive. So, like, and that plot kind of bugs me too. I'm like, really? Like, that's like, I guess that's kind of part 2 a little bit, where she puts on the sweater, Jenny puts on the sweater and fools him.
A little bit, Jason. Yeah.
But like, he kidnaps her and just chucks her down the basement and chains her to a wall. It's not like he's like worshiping her or anything. Like, he's not confused. It's just a weird plot point. I'm almost like, I almost rather he just killed Whitney and they find her body or something. But neither here nor there. But the missing person aspect does at least give you a reason for this one guy to be here, and then all the douchey friends, minus Jenna, who seems like a genuinely sweet person, they are all staying in this like Richie cabin, in this Richie, we got money cabin, and maybe that's why they're there. They're like, hey, we don't really like Trent. Who the fuck would like Trent? But we're gonna go there because he's got a big ass mansion in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, I mean, like, I appreciate they tried. I'm not telling you it's the greatest
Right.
plot ever, and I'm not telling you that, them going searching in the woods is just like compelling or oh my god, I hope they find Whitney. But they tried. And I appreciated the effort because it did at least give something to propel the story forward beyond, hey, we just showed up near Camp Crystal Lake and we're all getting hacked to death.
It's true. And what this movie does that's very different than the other Friday the 13th, outside of maybe part three, but really this is the one that to me is like heads and tails above the others. And what it does is it highlights Jason a lot. Jason in all the other movies is a ghost in the forest, and he will surprise you. He will get the jump on you. You don't spend a lot of time with him. You spend a lot of time with the campers. And then Jason pops up and it scares you, and he grabs you and then he disappears into the darkness. He hangs the body up and he goes and looks for another one. That's what he does. That's kind of his basic rhythm for most of these movies, almost all of them. And they take that away in this movie. In this movie, you see him move. It's almost like In a Violent Nature minus the third person aspect. They're giving him his own subplot, which is I have to get all of these people out of my territory. I don't know who's upset the apple cart, but I have my mom back there. That's what they're saying. They're saying I have my mom there, and if anyone comes for her, I'm going to chop their heads off the way they tried to do to her. He's of limited capacity. And so in his mind, he goes, I have my mom, I keep her here, and now people are near, and that's a problem, and I'm going to make it a problem. I actually appreciate that on a plot level. On a plot level, it makes sense what he's doing and why he's doing it. It just changes sort of the overall tone of the movie, and it gets kind of into that Platinum Dunes actiony thing a little bit. This is a low on scares movie because Jason's in it. You're with him. You see him move around. If you're seeing him charge through a tunnel, you know he's coming. There's no element of surprise. You just know that when that big fucker shows up, somebody's going to get really hurt. Like that's the thrill of it all, but it's not really a scare like the other movies. The other movies he will appear and get you. But there is motivation behind it, and I can appreciate that. That just like you're saying, they tried. What they're trying to say is he's desperately protecting what he believes is his mother. And if anybody comes near, they're going to face his wrath because he's not going to let what happened to her back in the 80s happen to her again. And I'm like, I do appreciate what that is. It doesn't necessarily translate into the most exciting movie of all time, but it's a badass Jason. And I think what they wanted to do was show him off more. And these guys, they should write more, genuinely. I think they should do way more stuff, Damian Shannon and Mark Swift, because they were like, okay, we're going to show a lot more Jason. How do we make that make sense? They made it make sense.
I mean, they did just do Send Help, which we gave a great review for this year. They wrote that movie, so
Yeah, they do. Honestly, they kind of knock it out of the park every time they do it. They do genre work, and it works. And I thought this worked, even though like I wasn't in love with Clay's plot. I understood why he was doing it. It's not like it didn't make sense. This movie makes all the sense. Really, there's nothing about it that's like I don't get it. I don't get why this is happening. I go, yeah, it's all there on the screen. It's not a traditional Friday the 13th movie in that respect.
I had read a couple interviews with them and a few other articles I had found from around 2009 when they were talking about this, and they said one of the things they wanted to differentiate their Jason from the other Jasons was like the random killing Jason goes on, but he's like, we really wanted to make it more about like almost like he's an animal and its territoriality. Like you come in his space, he's going to fuck you up. Now that's
Right.
not totally, different from the other Friday films because basically everyone shows up near Camp Crystal Lake and they get hacked
Right.
to pieces. But he wanted to make it clear like he has this home, he has this place that he keeps that's very sacred to him. You come near that and he's going to hack you to pieces. So they kind of refine it, make it a little bit more intricate in terms of why Jason is killing versus just like, hey, you showed up near my home, I'm going to kill everybody. So I did like that, and it didn't really need. I mean, when you talk about he had a home, he had his mother's head there, he had the girl he kidnapped who looks like his mother. Clearly, he's like protecting that space, and when people come near there, he kills them. So that makes total sense. Yeah, I mean, like I think overall, like the plotting in this movie works pretty well because they don't overcomplicate it. I mean, it's a guy looking for his sister. Like that's
Yeah.
not, and yeah, you're right. It does drag a little bit here and there, but overall, like what they're trying to do in this film, or what I feel like they're trying to do in this film, is they're trying to up the body count. They give you that great cold open, which you're right, that is one of the better cold opens because I think I read you don't even see the Friday the 13th name until like 20 minutes into the movie because you get
Right.
the early open with Pamela Voorhees, then you get the campers going to look for the weed, then you get him hacking down on Whitney, and it ends, and then you get to Friday the 13th, and then this new group shows up. So they up the body count. It's not just 6 or 7 friends showing up and they get hacked to pieces at Camp Crystal Lake. You got 4 or 5 friends showing up, horny as all get out, looking for weed. And then they get offed and killed, and then a new group shows up. So they're kind of like combining all the best of all worlds because they're not just
Yeah.
giving you one group of campers; they're giving you multiple group of campers to up the body count. And then they even get a sheriff in there, a police chief, whatever he is. They show him in there, so like they get a pretty good body count, and it actually makes sense versus like some of the Friday the 13th movies. Like they give you the dumbest reasons why the body count. Like in part 3 when he just shows up at a random house and just like hacks them to pieces. Like they're just like you do the 3Ds early in the film. You know what I'm talking about where they show up at like the shopkeepers and it's like why? Like what are they doing here? He's just like oh they've been here forever. They own a place near Camp Crystal Lake, but Jason just decides, you know what, it's time for them to fucking go. Like, it's a little hokey in terms of like, we got to up the body count, we got to have some more cool kills, so we got to inject that. This time, they actually make it make sense why these people are here. The one group came out there looking for weed, which is so 2009. What a 2009 plot that is. As soon as I knew that was the plot, but when it happened this time and the one guy, freaks out when he finds the weed plants, I was like, man, this wouldn't work in 2026 because weed is legal in like half the states in America now. You don't have this anymore. It made me laugh. But you have a reason for them to go there. He's giving them a reason to go there, and it's not, hey, let's just go hang out at haunted Camp Crystal Lake or Camp Blood or whatever. Let's just go look for weed. They get pieced up and tossed out and killed. Then the new group shows up, and they're just there for a vacation, which is very Friday the 13th. That is very much a plot. But then you do inject the Clay character who's looking for a sister, and he immediately butts heads with the Richie and his friends because they don't care about him. They're like, dude, we don't care about like when he's up at the counter at the convenience store saying, hey, can I hang up one of these flyers? And Trent's like, dude, can you move? You're taking up a lot of space, man. And he's like, I'm only looking for my missing sister. He's like, yeah, dude, but I need to check out for my water and my gas. Move out of my way. I'm like, immediately he would get a shovel to the head. But they give you a reason for them to be there. And it doesn't have to be the most complicated plot while they're there. It works. So I appreciate like some of the changes, some of the like a little bit of the updating here. And we've had a lot of discussions about this, Patrick. We might as well get into it now. We had a lot of discussions over the last year about where the slasher genre is going. We talked about this with the I Know What You Did Last Summer reboot or remake, or not reboot, not remake, reboot. We talked about this with a couple other movies. We talked about this, more recently as well with Scream 7. Our audience is getting too sophisticated and too advanced, I guess, for lack of a better word, to really enjoy a slasher outside of something like Terrifier, which is not even real. I mean, it's a slasher, but it's really built around the gnarliest, grossest kills, the goriest kills. It's not really. I mean, they have injected a plot, and I think that's actually held them back a little bit, especially in part 3. But like that's really what that franchise, and that's like, it's almost like a gross out franchise. And when people were coming out of Terrifier 2, they were not talking about, oh man, did you see the angel with the magic sword? No, they're saying, oh, did you see the insane kills and people were throwing up in the aisles or whatever because Art the Clown's insane? That's what they're going there for. That is like almost like a new age Friday the 13th because you go for the kills. You're not going for the plot. You're just going to see Art the Clown mutilate people. But outside of that, like most of the slasher franchises have just not worked. I Know What You Did Last Summer didn't get great reviews. Scream 7 did really well at the box office, but it didn't get good reviews. Like it was not like the best well-reviewed movie. We didn't particularly enjoy it either. So I wonder, like, how would Friday the 13th, 2009 play now? Because, like I said, I'm grading this movie on a bit of a scale because I'm telling you, like I've said very openly, I'm not a big Friday the 13th guy, But I do understand the appeal of these movies. Just like I know you're not a big nightmare guy like I am, but you understand the appeal of Freddy Krueger. I understand the appeal of Jason. It just doesn't totally appeal to me. But this movie was almost like the best of both worlds because it did give a little bit of plot, a little bit of story, which is, that's what I'm always looking for. And then it did give you some brutal kills. So, like, for a slasher film, this one works, but would it still work in this era?
I'm willing to bet it would work better than I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like something about that just it just tonally was like this is not making a lot of sense. Like it just isn't. I think because they did such good work with the story, everything makes sense. Everyone's motivations make sense. The only thing that doesn't make sense are the absolute lunatic personalities at this weekend house. That's the only thing. Like, and it feels completely out of time, but that sort of works for it. It's like it didn't make sense in 2009. It wouldn't make sense today, and it would probably only make sense in the 1980s, but yet because all the motivations are in place, you know why everybody's doing what they're doing. It's not just Crispin Glover dancing to a song that no one can hear. Like everyone is doing something. They're obnoxious. It's kind of weird, but it works inside its own story. I'm not saying that this would blow the box office away today, but I bet you like head to head, it would be better reviewed than Scream 7. Head to head, it would do better numbers than I Know What You Did Last Summer's requel. I really do. Like, it just seems like it gives you everything you want out of Friday the 13th without any of the without any of the worst elements of it, because boy, there are times when it's just flat out bad. As a franchise, it has had some very rough moments, and I'm like, it's just giving you the best of everything. I think it would do pretty well even today.
I mean, if you look at the most sequelized horror slasher franchises, I think that everyone recognizes immediately. It's Friday the 13th, it's Halloween, it's Nightmare on Elm Street, and now you got to include Scream because there are 7 movies.
Yeah.
It's more modern. It didn't start till 1996, but it's got 7 films. You can't say it's not among the greatest or the most iconic slasher franchises. Now, Halloween has existed in a lot of different forms. Obviously with part 1, part 2, part 3 doesn't even fit in there anymore, or doesn't fit at all actually. And then you get part 4, part 5, and part 6, and then they did Halloween H2O, which was kind of like a new restart. They kind of ignored every film but part 1 and part 2, and then that went away. And then of course they came out with David Gordon Green's 2018 movie, which is pretty good, and then he ended it with one of the worst horror films of all time, Halloween Ends. But they've kind of continuously kind of reinvented the franchise to keep that one going, because by the time they got to The Curse of Michael Myers, it got convoluted and just remarkably stupid. Our friend Dom, Horror Movie Mafia, did a thing about that. He's like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, I have no idea. This is a terrible movie, and it is a terrible movie. But they had to continuously kind of reinvent it to keep it going. Nightmare on Elm Street, I mean, originally they stopped at 6 films. Like, they got to Freddy's Dead and like, yeah, we're done. Like, we can't really go anywhere else with this. And even, I mean, we reviewed that movie a while back, and even me as the Freddy purist says that is an absolute dog shit movie. I hate Freddy's Dead. It's so bad. Part 5 isn't much better, but part 6 is really, really bad.
Yeah.
And then Wes Craven comes in, reinvents the franchise with New Nightmare. Very well reviewed film, kind of makes it a meta horror film, and very, very inventive, very creative. He wasn't making it to say we're going to make 10 more of these. He's just like, I want to do something different. Came out in I think 94, and it was something totally unique and something you hadn't seen before, and he kind of reinvigorated passion for that. And then of course they did the remake, which was once again one of the worst movies ever made. Like I think the Nightmare remake and Halloween Ends need to have like an ultimate battle where like only one can survive and the other one just gets erased from our memories forever. And then now we're stuck in kind of like the hell of like there's all kinds of rights battles, and so Nightmare on Elm Street has effectively gone away and has not come back since the 2010 remake. And I don't know. I assume at some point we'll get another one. We have no idea. Friday the 13th, though, to its credit, much like Scream has always been one storyline, one plot. Outside of part 5, which is the remarkably dumb idea to bring in some dude named Roy and make him pretend to be Jason, which everyone hates that movie.
There's a couple of Roy boys out there. I'm not one of them, but they're out there.
they've kind of and by the way, they're not overcomplicating it. They're just saying Jason
No.
dies and just keeps coming back alive. And then there are absolute purists out there who think Jason Takes Manhattan is brilliant. There are people out there, I've seen the arguments that think Jason X is brilliant, sending him to space, and it's like the most brilliant. Now, I don't know a lot of people who will tell me, even as like the Freddy purists, tell me that, oh yeah, Freddy's Dead is amazing. I've heard a couple people say, oh, I like it. It's goofy and it's kind of funny. Yeah. But I've rarely heard people be like, oh yeah, that's my favorite Freddy. I've legitimately heard people tell me Jason X is their favorite Friday the 13th.
Yeah. Oh, many.
Jason Takes Manhattan is their favorite Friday the 13th. And my long point about all this is it's just been consistently the same movie over and over and over again. The only change they really made was they're like, you know what? We've kind of played out Camp Crystal Lake. Let's take him to New York or a boat outside New York where he spends
and then Toronto.
the majority of the movie. And then let's take him to space. Because this formula of Jason just hacking the shit out of people in a contained area works no matter where you go. Now, once Jason X came out, and it didn't, and I don't even want to talk about Jason Goes to Hell. I don't even like to think of that as in the lexicon of Friday. That is like where they tried to inject plot, and it was horrible. And I think you hate that movie as well.
Not a fan.
But when they came back with 2009, like I mentioned in the intro, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre had done so well. The remake had done so well, made so much money. And by the way, it was very well reviewed. And you and I, we have our issues with that film, but overall, it's a pretty good movie. It's an action movie. It's not a horror movie. It's an action movie, but neither here nor there. They tried to reinvent a little bit, but they still stuck to what made Friday the 13th a fan favorite amongst Friday fans, which is Jason shows up and brutally murders people. So I think this franchise, this is now 12 films if you count Freddy versus Jason as one of the, parts of the puzzle. That's 12 films. Mm-hmm. And it's still a beloved franchise. Like I went to Horror Hound in Cincinnati last weekend. I saw a lot of people dressed up as Jason. To this day, I still see a lot of people love that Jason, that hockey mask. Everyone knows it. So there's staying power built with this formula. It doesn't work for me because I do like a plot. I like a little bit more story. I like something to kind of draw me to the characters a little bit more, draw me to the killer even. Friday the 13th has never really done that, but to its credit, it's always kind of been that way. They've never, yes, some of them are dumber than others. Some of them are really badly acted or even badly executed, but they've stuck to the formula. And somehow they've gotten to 12 films. And we are now getting, which I know we're going to talk about the future of the franchise later, they're now getting a prequel series on Peacock called Camp Crystal Lake. They're literally doing a Pamela Voorhees origin story because this is, now, will that work? Because that's going to have to inject some plot. We'll find out when that comes out.
We will see.
But it feels like this is one of the most consistent franchises out there.
Damon, Friday the 13th is the Coca-Cola of slashers. It's consistent as hell, and everybody has their favorite flavor. Some people really love Jason X. Some people gotta have their Jason Takes Manhattan. I've even heard plenty of people support Jason Goes to Hell and Friday the 13th Part 5. People love it for what it is. It never strays from it. We always have to wrestle Halloween like a goddamn bear, because of the way it gets in the way of itself, trying to re-engineer its story constantly trying to figure out a way to re-engineer its story. And even in this movie here in 2009, it's still the lore. It's still the lore you've always known. They didn't even change it. They just showed you how it worked a little bit better. That's basically all they did. They were like, here's how it started, here's how it's going, and here's how it works. But it's all the same stuff you've always known. They didn't do anything other than just show you more. And there's a reason I love Friday the 13th, and I think it's because I always get that movie. I always get it. A couple of diversions in there, Damon. Yes, we concede. We all have them. No franchise is immune. But and you know me as a filmmaker, and it makes a lot of sense now why I gravitated towards this over the other slashers is, I'm a bit of a minimalist filmmaker. I like to actually peel back and say less and just let the images tell the story. on some weird level, Friday the 13th is like that. There's not a ton of great like dialogue scenes. There's a few here and there. There's a few that like are for all the wrong reasons you like glom onto. But overall, it's about the image. And I want this is a one huge compliment I want to pay this movie. They couldn't have gotten Jason more right to reinvent him, and he's a living Jason because there is two eras, right? There is the living Jason of the first four movies, and then there is the resurrected Jason, which is from six and on. And this is a living Jason, but he also has all these great touches of what the undead Jasons look like. They make it much more clear how disfigured he is. They kind of toyed with it a little bit in the original four movies, but they really show you like the way they designed his makeup. He does look undead, even though he's not. He's got the one glassed out eye that's really foggy and opaque, and he's got some clear deformities on his face and all of that stuff. And you just get the littlest glimpses, and you're like, he looks undead, but he's not. He's not undead until the end, which I believe was tacked on, if I'm not mistaken. They do finally. Jenna and Clay do get the jump on him in a scene that's right out of I think part three because they get the chain wrapped around his neck and he's struggling with it. It's right out of three, and that last sequence they really start pouring on the homages. You start to see them, this one, that one. I even saw an homage from part six because he stands up on the bus that's overturned, which is an homage for part six. I even saw him burst out from a big pile of wood. That's an homage from part seven. They were absolutely saying this was a big love letter to this movie. And then the original kill they shot was the chain gets tied around his neck. Jenna feeds it into the wood chipper or whatever it is, the grinder that they've got there. He gets dragged up to it, and then his neck just snaps. In the reshot version, he's there and he's fighting because he's a fucking beast. He's a beast of a man. He's fighting this machine, and she finally just takes his machete and gives him, one of the great lines of horror, right? And I'm being a little sarcastic.
This was like I said, I've seen this movie, and I know I'm admitting I'm grading it on a scale. I enjoy this movie. It's not a great movie. I'm telling you right now, it's not a good movie, but it's a good movie for what it is. I enjoy it. But I kind of forgot about that line when Whitney stares him down and she says, "Oh my God!" It was such. I mean, we joke about all like the worst lines in horror movie history, and generally it comes down to this particular line.
Do your thing, cuz.
From the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I don't know, whatever number that is.
3D, I think it was.
Yeah, it's so bad when it's Alexandra Daddario and she's like throws him the chainsaw and she says, "Do your thing, cuz." It's so bad. Friday the 13th, 2009 has its own do your thing, cuz when Whitney and Clay trap Jason in the wood chipper and he's getting pulled towards it with the chain, she looks at him and she goes, "Hey, Jason, say hi to mommy in hell." It's so bad.
I mean, she doesn't quite deliver it. That's not quite the line reading, but
I mean, that's pretty, because she does do the pause. She goes,
yeah,
"Hey,
in
Jason."
hell.
And he looks at her and she goes, "Say hi to mommy in hell." And I'm like, oh God, I forgot how bad that line was. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but like it just, oh boy, I was like, man, you
alone,
you have your own do your thing, cuz.
We got our own do you thing, cuz. But I think even that was a little bit, maybe even an homage to Jason Goes to Hell. Like even just little things. They wanted this crescendo to kind of basically walk us through the entire franchise, this storied franchise, this very, very successful franchise that has always done very well in horror. And they kind of just gave all these nods to the fans. There's a little nod of Crazy Ralph, the guy in the tow truck. A very, very, very similar resemblance to Crazy Ralph, to the point where I was like, oh shit, is it him? And I forgot that he died like back in the 80s. So it definitely wasn't him, but it was a guy that unmistakably was dressed to look like him. But back to Jason himself, the design was so cool. I could see why they wanted to show it off more. He really looked awesome. He really looked kind of part undead, part real. And ultimately they beat him, and then they toss him in the lake. And they were like, that's the end. That's the end of our movie. And the executives went, we can't end it that way. But the way they ended it, Damon, made zero sense to me. And if anyone's foggy on this, I'll refresh you. They dump him into the lake, and you see his face a little bit as he falls through the water, and then they dump his mask in there, and then the mask floats down. Beautiful shot, Daniel Pearl doing his thing. It hits the bottom of the lake, and you're like, okay, I guess he's gonna live at the bottom of the lake as Jason does. And then like a split second later, he just breaks through the pier and grabs her and drags her down as an homage to the original, which is the canoe jump scare. But I was just like, it was so weirdly timed. I was like, why don't you have some sort of an epilogue like the original does, where you think everything's over and everything's calm, and you kind of misdirect the audience into a sense of safety. They did it like instantly. It's like the minute the mask hit the lake floor, he was immediately back up and grabbing them, and I was like, okay, I see what you're up to. I know what you're homaging, but I would have liked it to have a little more coherence. It seemed like they just stuck that in because the studio says we've got to have an opening for a sequel, so show something, and B, they wanted to homage the idea that Jason will rise from the dead. That's one of the greatest things about Jason. He's an unkillable ghoul after the fourth movie, and so they wanted to put that in there. I thought it was just a little bit sloppy.
Well, also, I mean, if you're going to do that and you're going to pay homage to the original, which is, one of the greatest not post credit scenes that happens before the credits, but like one of the greatest unexpected scenes.
Yeah, it's a great scare.
Because the whole Pamela Voorhees twist is one of the greatest. That's still that's an iconic trivia question. Who's the killer in Friday the 13th? Just like Scream says, everyone says Jason. No, and the original is Pamela Voorhees. And then obviously at the end you see the boy jump up and then she's dreaming, and it's a great sequence. So I get why they did that, and you're right, they pay homage to a lot of the Friday movies. Even I, as like not the Friday aficionado, I recognized a lot of them. So I get why you do that. But you kill him in a wood chipper and you stab him and you tell him to go see Mommy in Hell. Why the fuck are you dragging him out of there? His big ass body. This guy's like 6'5" and probably like 300 pounds. Why the fuck are you dragging him out of there to the dock and like, let's just dump him over the edge and put him in the water? Like, what are you trying to pay homage? Is it, here, dude, have a watery grave? Like, if you're gonna do that, do it like they've done in some of the other movies, where like they chain around his neck. I care what is it part 7 where they chain around his neck and they dump him to the bottom of the lake with like rocks or something? And he drowns.
Part 6,
yeah.
They do that.
So like, do that. Like, if you're gonna make it where he's in the lake, who the fuck kills a mass murderer and then just decides, let's go ahead and chuck him in the lake? Like, it's of all the like really dumb things you can do in a movie like this, that's got to be one of the dumbest. Like, you stab him. He's getting pulled, and by the way, he still has the chains around his neck. It's getting ripped into the wood chipper. That's how it traps him there, and then she stabs him. You went in and unwrapped his neck and pulled him out and said, you know what? He's a good dude. Let's give him a water. Let's give him a grave. He needs to be buried. Huh? Like, just kill him in the water. Have the final battle scene right there.
Yeah, have the final battle in the water.
Have him get stuck. Whitney saves Clay and she stabs him and he dies and he falls in the water. And then, the next morning they're like, we're going to go home, and then he jumps back up. The idea that these brother and sister, the sister has been kidnapped for 6 weeks and held hostage by this psychopathic giant masked killer, is going to be like, you know what? He deserves a burial. Let's put him in the water. Who the fuck does that?
But again, I think it was one of those things where they were like, how do we walk it up to that moment? And I'm like, okay, well, there's some options. One last thing that I really love about this movie is the false protagonist. Now, obviously, Clay is there. He shows up to look for Whitney. We know that. And then Jenna tags along. Jenna seems very set up to become a final girl in the movie. And they do something really great is when they finally find Whitney, now they have to escape his lair, and they are getting out. And they shove Whitney through the chute, like, get the fuck up there. And then Clay runs up, and then Jenna is taking up the rear. And then all of a sudden, and this, I totally forgot how this played out. And on this last, I've seen it like 6-7 times, and I just forgot how great this psych out is that as Jenna's being pulled through, machete right through the chest, like a brutal, clear as day, you are dead, Jenna. I loved that. It was a great subversion because you were sure that Jenna, who was, basically mirrored girls like Tina and Susie and all these other ones where you're just like, oh, cool, like she's going to be the final girl of this movie. It's like, nope, that's not going to happen in this movie. This movie has a final boy, and that's Jared. That's Jared Padalecki's Clay. Clay is the final boy. His sister, of course, he saves. That's the whole point. His plot was, I got to go find my sister and save her, and he does that. I really appreciated that Jenna, who for all intents and purposes was good and helpful and helped along with the plot, at the end of the day did not survive. I forgot about just how sort of they just rip her out of our arms right near the end of the movie. I was like, damn, I actually appreciate that they did that because any other movie they would not have done it.
And I'm not like I think the twist and the subversion of expectations. You're absolutely right. That's a good twist. But I actually hated her death because it felt so unsatisfying in that moment. Like, I'm okay with them killing her. I'm okay with them like, oh my God, the girl you think's going to survive and save the day, who's been, by Clay's side this entire time and actually wanted to help him. She was the one member of her friend group who wasn't a complete dick. I get that. Like, I get the idea of that. But like crawling through that tunnel, it just felt too obvious because Clay puts his sister in and he climbs in before he puts Jenna in, and then she comes in last place and she's the one that gets dragged out. I don't have a problem with her dying. I have a problem with it happening right there because it just felt so unsatisfying because they had built her up as the other main character. Whitney is like, again, Whitney's in the very beginning and then she's trapped. So we don't really get to know Whitney. We just know Whitney as Clay's sister. We don't really know her as her own person.
She's the goal of the movie.
Yeah, Jenna is the other main character. And again, I like the idea of her dying. It subverts that expectation. We're like, oh my God, I thought we found our new final girl and she doesn't make it. But I thought in that moment of being in that that cave in that tunnel, of her just randomly getting hatcheted or macheted, I guess, was just kind of unsatisfying. Almost like I have no problem with her dying, but in that moment, and I'm not even getting, like, I could get into the chivalrous thing. Like, if you're a guy, why would you put the two girls in first?
Send her first, yeah.
Yeah. It's just little things like that. I'm just like, like, I like that she would have died. Like, I think it would have been cooler if he puts the two girls in and like he starts getting in, and then Jason grabs his leg and starts pulling him out, and he kicks Jason, whatever, and he finally gets away. And then when they pop out of the tunnel, they pop out and here comes Whitney, here comes, Jenna, and finally here comes Clay, and they think they're safe for a moment, and then Jason's, reappearing self jumps out of nowhere, and that's where he hacks, Jenna out of nowhere. I think that would have worked better. It was just so random. It just didn't seem to fit in that moment. I know it sounds weird. It just didn't fit for me in that moment, especially with like Clay being like, let me go in front of you, Jenna. It kind of made it obvious like something was going to happen there because the last person in the tunnel is always going to get it. And of course, Jenna got it. But yeah, I mean, I like the subversion that she doesn't make it. I just felt like her death was a little unsatisfying in that particular moment.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was I just forgotten about it, and it was shocking, and it was like there was no like, oh, maybe she'll make it. It's like, nope, this isn't Texas Chainsaw 2022 where they take something directly to the heart and then get up and walk around and talk for a half an hour. You're done. You got a machete through the chest. You are done, dead to rights, right then and there. I really did like it. Damon, is it category time?
Well, I got to throw one more at you. You mentioned the tunnels as how Jason's getting around. And
correct.
Right, that was a nice little twist there. But there's one that I got to mention. I know you know what I'm talking about. After Jason kills the one character, I can't remember with the axe or whatever his name was, and he brutally murders him. And then the characters come outside, and he's suddenly on the roof. And I'm like, dude, that's a limber fucking Jason, man. He's on the roof in 2 seconds flat. That's the one where I'm like, you're stretching a little bit here because
they were compressing time just a little bit. Like in the editing room, they were like, look, we need to shave 2 minutes off this movie, so we need to find it anywhere, and they did it right there because they easily could have just stretched a little bit more time inside the house just to get him up. He only needed about 40 seconds to get up there. Instead, he's up there in about 10 max. And I was like, that's a very quick, he's clearly very athletic and strong, but boy, that's a big guy to get up there in less than 10 seconds.
And this is a movie produced by Michael Bay, and that's a kind of a dirty word sometimes, depending on how you feel about his movies. Did you hear the rumor that, like, I guess, like, he watched this and walked out in the middle because it was too sexual? Did you hear that rumor?
No, I hadn't heard that rumor. I didn't know that was a problem for Michael Bay.
I mean, I read it. I don't know if it's true or not. It's one of those like, is it internet research kind of things? But I thought it was funny because man, did they pack a lot of sex and nudity in this movie? Like this is like they are just like we're going full 80s. We're gonna have a scene where the boyfriend hooks up with a random girl, which once again kind of speaks to like how close are these people because you're just gonna like randomly hook up with your friend's boyfriend. But okay, whatever. And then they have one of the longest drawn out horror sex scenes in
I
horror
think it was
movie
10
history.
minutes.
And the dude is like full on just like like Ernest Hemingway describing this woman's breasts. Like it's hilarious like how obsessed he is, but it's like usually horror movie sex scenes are like 2 minutes max, and then one of the people's getting killed at the end. Now they eventually get killed, but long after, like, and one of the funniest things that happens twice in this movie, I just have to point this out as I was cracking up watching this tonight. At the beginning scene, when the couple's around the campfire and she just disrobes behind the other guy to invite him to come in and bone her in the tent, and then with Trent and Bree in the house when she's like takes off her bra and he's like, oh my God, you have the greatest breasts ever. Both scenes, they talk a lot about finishing. I don't want to get too crude here, but the one he's like, are you close? I'm close. Let's go together. Are you close? I'm close. They do that, and then the second
in both
scene,
scenes,
and they're like, are you close? I'm getting close. I got 8 seconds. Are you close? Let's go. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, no one has a discussion like this in the middle of sex.
But you got to stretch the time somehow, and those are extended sex scenes, and it's interesting because and obviously that is nothing new in the Friday the 13th franchise, and they were just like, yeah, there's going to be minimum 2 sex scenes in this movie, but since they didn't have any other sex scenes, they were like, let's make each of them 5 minutes plus. That's a lot of screen time. I don't think people realize just how much screen time that is. And the second sex scene with Bree and Trent is, I would say, almost around 10 minutes. I mean, it's like they almost give you a real time sex scene, because they're cutting around and there's other parts of the story that are building during that time, but they are full blown having sex that entire time. In your typical Jason movie, you probably catch people right at the end of having sex. They have just finished having sex usually, and then someone's walking around topless and then they get killed. That's usually kind of the pattern. In this, they were like, no, we go to Bone Town here. Like this is Pound City, and we are going to be doing that twice in this movie. That's what we're going to do. And fair game. They again stuck to the franchise elements.
Well, and the funny thing is, if you really think about it, neither couple that gets killed having sex is really even post. Like they're not even during. Like it's not even post coitus. Like they're not even just like they just finished. I'm going to go to the bathroom and take a shower, which I think happens in part 2.
Yes, right.
Like literally the one.
Well, Bree and Trent though, they finish up and they actually come out.
Well, no, but I mean the other couple, they're in the middle of it. I'm going to go. You go. I'm going to go. And then she's is he outside watching us? And he's like, I'm not letting you do anything until you get rid of him. And so he walks outside and, goes, looks, and he finds the weed, and then he finds his buddy hacked up, and then she gets obviously killed in the sleeping bag. But like generally speaking, like it's actually usually it's like really quickly after the sex. And they're like, this one they didn't get to go. They're like, we're going to go together. And then they don't. And then he goes outside, and that's where that one happens. But the other one with Bree and Trent is even funnier because they just have full on Pound Town. Like they go all the way, and they're literally
they finish up and everything. They get dressed again.
They're literally cuddling afterwards, like they're spooning afterwards, and then they get up and get dressed and go downstairs. Jenna seems so unconcerned that she goes to the door and hears her boyfriend pounding away on her friend. It's hilarious because usually the sex scenes in horror films, the trope that they introduce in Scream is like you can't have sex, and then something bad will happen, and then of course it actually does happen in Scream as well. But they're just like, we really want Trent and Bree to bone and turn this into like full-on Skinamax porn, and then they're going to be done. We're going to bring them downstairs, and then we'll pick up the horror movie again.
Yeah. I mean, they just really took some time to bone.
I thought it was hilarious because usually the consequence of sex is the death. They eventually die.
Yeah, eventually,
But it's not even because
it's not related to it, the moment at all. It's not related to the moment.
Jenna doesn't freak out and slap Trent and say, what a pig you are. Or, I can't believe you betrayed me, Bree. None of that. They're just like, hey, we went to Pound Town. We both finished. Now we're downstairs. We're going to continue the horror movie.
Showered. I got a slice of pizza. We rehydrated. Yeah, I put fresh coat of makeup on. Trent took a shower. It's like Jesus Christ. Okay, that was just literally there so that you could watch them bone for 10 minutes.
It's funny. It's just because like that's just so not like I'm not.
Yeah, it's not. It's very not typical.
You can understand like people who complain about gratuitous nudity in horror films, especially the Friday the 13th movie where everyone gets naked. But like that one, at least usually there's a consequence of it. This time, there's not really even a consequence. Like they don't get killed right away. Like they go downstairs, Bree's all traumatized because the one guy gets killed outside and Trent's still being a dick. But they didn't. They just were like, hey, we really want to see these two bones. So let's just get that in there and then we'll continue the movie.
I mean, that padded the movie out to 90 minutes. That's how they got it out to 90 minutes.
A little Pound Town in there. Yeah, Patrick, let's get to categories and we'll kick things off as we do each and every week on the show. And let's talk about best performance. Once again, I'm going to be grading this on a scale because the performances are not all great, but there are a couple gems in here. So, Patrick, who gets your best performance for 2009's Friday the 13th?
Damon, I got to defend this movie. 2009 does have decent performances for a 2000s horror film. I would say it's some of the better ones. Like I think the only other place I can think of performances, at least on this level, are the Texas Chainsaw Remake and The Beginning. I think those are the two ones, and it's got R. Lee Ermey in there. So, and Jessica Biel and Jordana Brewster in those movies. So, like, they actually had really legit actors. And I will say for this one, the best actor, in my opinion, was Jared Padalecki, who played Clay. He's kind of in his own movie. And that's fine, by the way, for a movie like this. That's fine. If you're in a movie that's all on your own, just make it a good one. And he did. He made it a good one. He's earnestly looking for his sister. He wasn't going to play any of the games. He didn't feel like a lot of the male love interests in Friday the 13th are kind of just dunderheads. They're not particularly good because really the final girl is the one to shine. Those are the ones that are really there to for the audience to focus on. So the men tend to just be kind of stupid in the background. They don't even have great lines. Jared Padalecki was playing it straight. He was really earnestly looking for his sister. He was really good at just going, "Hey, Trent, you're a douchebag. I'm actually not going to stoop to your level. I'm actually going to be pretty. I'm going to show you that I'm a cut above you the whole time." He knew how to play off of everybody really well. And I'd never given him credit up until this time where we had to evaluate it for the show, where I was like, he's doing a really good job in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is so I never watched Supernatural. I know that is an incredibly popular TV series of people, but just judging from the outside and when I met them at Comic-Con, again, both Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki were the two guys I met, both incredibly nice guys. It always struck me just from like the photos of the series and little video clips I saw here and there just being at Comic-Con. Jensen Ackles always struck me as like the brooding, kind of, the manly brother, and Jared Padalecki kind of seemed more like the funny, comic relief brother. I don't know if that's really how they play. I'm just saying that's how it looks.
I don't know.
That's how but I give credit where credit's due. Jared Padalecki kind of pulls off the like dark brooding brother here. Like even though like that doesn't strike me as his look, I guess best way to say it, he pulls it off. Now I will say I did notice one thing with this movie. I desperately wanted to own a Harley Davidson pretty much ever since I was a kid. Sons of Anarchy didn't help that inclination because now I want one even worse. My girlfriend refuses to let me have one. Did you notice? And this is nitpicky. I know it's really nitpicky. Did you notice that bike he drives, the motorcycle, looks really small for him? Like, it almost looked like he was like, could we have upsized his motorcycle? Because it looks like he's driving one that's like 2 sizes too small for him.
I wish I had paid better attention to that motorcycle. I've kind of gotten out of motorcycles since Sons of Anarchy's been over. But like to me, it sort of reminded me more of a cafe racer, which is typically a smaller Japanese or English bike with a 2-up seat, which seemed like that's what he had. And that is kind of a smaller bike. Like those are typically like European and Japanese bikes don't have the bulk that Harley Davidson would have. And he's a big guy. He's not a small guy.
What I'm saying.
So
Well, that's
It
what I'm
makes it
saying. Like,
look it makes it look tinier on him. Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like when I met, because I met him, I'm 6'3", and when I meet people who are like as tall or taller than me, I remember that. And he was a tall dude. Him and Jensen Ackles were both tall dudes. And it was just funny because I never noticed that before. They did the one scene of him in the, I think it's in the beginning when he's driving. You kind of see the silhouette of him driving away from the convenience store, and he's driving up the road. And I'm like, man, it looks like a man on a boy's motorcycle right now. I just noticed. I was like, this looks really out of size. For me, Patrick, I gave my best performance to Danielle Panabaker, who I like very much. I was a big fan of hers when she was in The Flash. I watched The Flash show on CW. She was in that show. And by the way, to your point of her dying and getting killed and kind of, usurping the idea of like her being the final girl, which was a nice twist, she plays that role of like the good girl very, very well. Like, you don't like, you buy it. Like when she approaches Clay in the convenience store and says, what happened, when she's like being very nice to him, when he shows up at the house not knowing it's Trent's house, he's just kind of driving around the area trying to put out flyers about his missing sister. She's very sweet, very genuine. And I guess my one complaint would be, why the fuck are you friends with these people you're friends with? Because, oh my God, do you not fit with this group? But I liked her performance. She played you mentioned it. They wrote and created a 80s horror film made in 2009 and taking place in 2009. Now, you can complain and say it's a little too 80s, sure, but she played the prototypical final girl, up to that point when she actually dies. I thought she did it really, really well, and I bought the character. Like the other one I would say, honestly, is Travis Van Winkle, because he played a douche to perfection. But I think those two roles, like, they got it right, and it worked.
It did. Yeah, no, I mean, that was part of the shock of her dying in there. I was like, oh shit, like she really fell into the role of the final girl for me. And I was like, oh my God, the final girl didn't make it.
Yeah, you're kind of rooting. You're kind of like, oh yeah, of course she's going to make it. So yeah, I thought it was really good. Patrick, next category, MVP. So when it comes to Friday the 13th, 2009, who gets your MVP for this movie?
Damon, let's be real. When you show up to a Friday the 13th movie, you're there for one thing and one thing only. You're there for fucking Jason Voorhees. You want to see a hulking dude in a hockey mask with a machete who fucks shit up. And whenever they decide to cast a new guy, everybody's ears perk up. Everybody's all a buzz. Who's going to don the suit this time? Derek motherfucking Mears. Fantastic. This is where I learned of the man's name. It got burned into my brain. As a Friday the 13th fan, I know these guys who play the more modern Jasons. I don't know the stuff prior to part 7. I know Kane Hodder and up. Derek Mears did a phenomenal job. I mean, he embodied him for just a big hulking dude, about 6'5", really thick necked kind of guy. Really embodied and gave Jason his own personality. He wasn't copying Kane Hodder, which would be which would be the instinct. I think people go, I think of the way Kane Hodder moves as Jason. And he's like, nope, I'm not that guy. I'm another guy. I have something else. When they were doing the casting for 2009's Friday the 13th, they almost didn't go with Derek because they were like, dude, you're too nice. And we don't see you as a psychopathic killer. And he goes, try me. I promise you I can do it. And he got there, he got on set, he got into the makeup. And when they saw him swing that machete, they realized they'd found their Jason. I mean, I would have loved like 3 or 4 movies with Derek Mears. He did such a good job. The biggest tragedy of this is it had a monumental fall off. It was one of the most record-breaking fall offs of all time, actually. It had something like an 81 or 88% fall off on its second weekend. Made this money and overall, but it didn't have legs at the box office like they thought it was going to, and they just decided not to go forward with the sequel. But Derek Mears in that suit, phenomenal.
And I'd heard, and you probably have heard this too, talking about like why they originally weren't going to cast him. I'd also heard and read a couple of things that he really wanted to make his own Jason. He didn't want to emulate Kane Hodder or any of the other people. He didn't
Right.
want to be just like another Jason, like, oh yeah, this looks like Jason. So he made him like, I think they worked, from what I read, they worked on like, him running and moving and being more agile and still being a big hulking, muscular killer, but not just being like the classic Jason of just like kind of stomping through the woods and showing up and killing you. And Derek made it his own. So the credit to him. Like I said, you're absolutely right. And I think he did a great job at it. I know I'm taking the cop-out answer here, Patrick, for my MVP, but I'm going to give it to him, and that's going to be Mark Swift and Damian Shannon. While I say this isn't a particularly great movie, because honestly it's not, rewatching, I was like, man, this is fun for Friday the 13th, but God, there's so many like cheesy moments and whatever. But I'm like, that's kind of the staple of 80s horror. I get it. They found a way back in. And I think because you've seen remakes of other films, not just horror films, just in general, when they remake it and they try to take mythology from the other movies and then inject them into the remake, and it so rarely works out right. Like, you're just like, why did you try that? Like, I think of one of the greatest remakes of all time, which is Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, written by James Gunn. It's zombies and a mall. That's literally the only DNA they share with the original George A. Romero film, which is also a classic. One of the few where you can say both the original and the remake are absolute classics. Yeah, they're in a mall and there's a zombie apocalypse. That's really the only DNA they share. That's it. And for Friday the 13th in 2009, they somehow injected elements, really heavy elements from part 1, 2, 3, and 4, but to the point where you don't really get like, oh my God, stop. Like, just stop trying to pay homage or stop trying to pay reference to the other films. You mentioned they even kind of referenced, a little bit of part 7, a little bit of part 6, blah, blah, blah. They did it in a really subtle way, and it worked. I was kind of shockingly amazed at how well it worked for what it was. And as I said earlier, these films don't have plots. They did give it a plot, and they didn't overcomplicate it. You're right, it does drag a little bit during the searching for Whitney scenes, but ultimately this is a 90-minute movie. And it's funny because rewatching it tonight, when Clay and Jenna go looking for Whitney, they're outdoors, they're getting at Camp Crystal Lake, and then like 2 seconds later, it's pitch black dark. They're just like, fuck it, we're just getting into the dark stuff where Jason shows up. And I was like, I kind of appreciate that. They're just like, you know what, we don't want to drag this out any longer. Make it nighttime. Jason shows up, they hide under a boat, and he fucks shit up. But like, they kind of get the point. Like, they injected just enough story to where you're like, okay, there's a plot here. Not the deepest plot, but it works. And then obviously they get the kills right. They got Jason right. There's other things I could complain about, but for the most part it works. So I got to give them credit. Like, they understood the assignment.
As a deep, deep fan of this franchise, the way they homaged it was so great. Because as you said, they did not hammer us over the head with it. They did not. I mean, even as much as I love Alien Romulus, they did not need to they did not need to say, get away from her, you bitch. And they said it. And it just, you were like, oh, if you'd just left that out, you'd have stuck the landing. Like, everything else about that movie, I really enjoyed. I just hated that they had to do that, had to like smack us over the head with something. Whereas in this, they don't. They go, if you look right over there, there's the wheelchair. Remember the wheelchair when he sticks a machete through the guy's head and he goes wheelchair flopping down these stairs? The chair's right over there. He did it at some point in his life, just so you know. Like, all those little things, all those little touches are so, so important to real fans of the franchise. And it was done ever so swiftly, ever so effortlessly. They really didn't get in the way of the story that they put forth, by the way, that they said, okay, but we do have a story over here and we are going to make everything work out. And they did it great. Honestly, the things that I get most bothered by in this movie, I would more likely blame on the director. The way the actors portrayed themselves as these 80s archetypes. Like, that's choices you could have made in casting, which is very much Marcus Nispel's job. In casting and in just tweaking the performance on set and going, I don't know about that, about the compression of time, which you're like, I'm sorry, it's very jarring that we just went from day to night. It's very jarring that I just saw him on the ground and 10 seconds later he's on the roof. Those are Marcus Nispel's problems. They're not the writer's problems. They aren't. And these guys, I tell you, every time I need to now make it a point to track what these guys specifically are up to. They write good shit. They just do. They understand genre. They understand the lore that people enjoy. and they deliver on it, and they deliver on it in kind of a fun, breezy way.
And last thing I want to say real quick before we move on. One thing I appreciate about this movie and even the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake from 2003 is when you're remaking a classic horror film like that, Texas Chainsaw 74, Friday the 13th started in 80, 81. You are trying to attract. You are attracting the old audience. We know that people who are you are a hardcore Friday fan. You're of course going to say. I wasn't even a Friday fan. I was like, I got to go see this. But you're trying to attract a new audience. You remember. I don't remember what Freddy versus Jason was. What 2002. So we're talking
like
7 years later, and that wasn't even really a Jason movie. It was a Freddy movie with Jason in it. The last was Jason Goes to Hell was what, 98, 97, something like that? So you're talking about a decade later from a pure Jason movie. We talk about injecting all the elements of the other movies, but what they did so brilliantly is they just gave you a movie that even if you had never seen Jason, you've never seen a Friday the 13th, this movie would make sense to you. You don't need to know all the lore and all the mythology of the other films. It still makes sense. You might be a little confused about the opening scene with the mother if you don't totally know the Pamela Voorhees thing, but it's still enough to where you get it. If you're a savvy movie viewer, you're going to get what that is. And I appreciate that. And I said the same thing about 2003's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, even though it's not as good as the original, they give you a reason to understand everything that's happening while still paying a little bit of homage to the original classic. And that's why a remake like Nightmare on Elm Street failed so badly, because even though they remade it, the remake doesn't make sense. There's so many plot holes and dumb twists in that movie. You're like, what are you doing? Like what is this? This is not even a good. Like, this isn't even a well written movie. Credit to them for actually giving you a movie that makes sense, whether you are a hardcore Friday the 13th fan or this is your first Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, that was their first Friday the 13th movie. For a lot of young millennials, and for them, it's their favorite one, and I can see why.
Yeah. Next category, Patrick. Let's talk about best kill / best gore. So when it comes to the remake, which one gets your best kill / best gore?
Damon, obviously, 13 bodies in this is a proper good slasher, but nothing wet my whistle quite like one of the early kills, which was I called the sleeping bag burn. Now, one of the more iconic Jason kills of all time is when Kane Hodder takes that sleeping bag in part 7 and smacks that woman against the tree. And he's like, that's how I'm going to kill you. I'm going to huck you against the tree. And people just glommed onto it. And we're like, never mind that he holds a machete. That sleeping bag kill is iconic. They repeated it in, I believe, Jason X in like a simulation machine or something like that. And they homage it here and they made it something different, something its own, and something that just absolutely had my jaw on the floor. I was like, I never would have thought of this. Jason grabs her, stuffs her in a sleeping bag, ties her up, hangs her over the fire, and she's hanging upside down. And then Marcus Nispel, great idea. Him and Daniel Pearl put a camera inside with her while she's screaming upside down, and you can see the flames licking the bag, and you're like, holy shit, this is a hardcore fucking kill. And then eventually the bottom of the bag burns out, and by that point she's burnt to a singe. She falls into the fire. You see like smoke rising out of her nose and her mouth and her eyes, and you're like, that was a hardcore fucking kill with a grand homage to one of the most iconic kills in the entire franchise. That's the kind of shit where you just stand up and applaud, and you're just like, absolutely give me more of that. Whatever that is, I want more.
Yeah, they did a really good job with that one, and obviously, like you said, it's very much paying homage to the original that kill from Part 7, and it works really well. It's a twist on it, but it works really well. So, Patrick, rewatching this tonight, I think the sleeping bag kill is the best kill. Let me be honest about that, but I wanted to pick a different one so we didn't double up here. And I was watching the movie trying to pay particular attention to which one I liked the best, and I think the one that caught me and I was like, okay, that was creative and a little different, was when Jason runs into Lawrence in the tool shed when he finds Chewie is dead, and he runs away and he finds the axe. And now, maybe just a little bit of a plot hole. Jason suddenly is a master axe thrower, which may be a bit of a stretch, but sure. He throws it over. By the way, he throws it overhead, which is actually the proper way to throw an axe like that. So they at least got that right. He didn't take one hand and just chuck it. And it crashes into the back of Lawrence and he falls over. Now, he doesn't die. He's laying there screaming. All his friends are like, we got to go check on him. And Clay's like, dude, he's trying to lure you out there. Like, he's not, you're going out to your own death. And then when they don't come out, Jason's like, well, fuck it, let me just kill this dude. So he turns Lawrence around and just shoves him, and then the axe goes from the back of his back through his chest,
Yeah.
and he chucks him into the water. Really brutal kill and really cool because you think, oh, he got axed in the back, he's going to die. No, he's still lingering and like, well, you didn't come to save your friend, so I'm really going to fucking kill him. And he jams that axe through his chest. I was like, oh, God, very brutal kill.
Very brutal. Really one of the more hardcore kills. I also appreciate Trent's kill, which was after far after his post-coital encounter. He's running away from Jason. He thinks he's gotten out of the way. He waves down a tow truck guy who looks a lot like Crazy Ralph, and Jason gets to jump on him, just beats the shit out of him, and then impales him on the back of the tow truck. And then you just see Trent's lifeless body flopping away as Crazy Ralph drives away. And I was like, hell yeah, it was a good death for Trent.
Yeah, Trent got his rocks off before him. I'm like, that guy didn't deserve that.
I know he did. He didn't get that. Yeah. But don't douches they always end up getting something, right? So that it made sense. It tracked.
I guess. This next category was my idea, and we know I mentioned earlier they are doing a Camp Crystal Lake show on Peacock. And if I don't know, are you watching the HBO show DTF St. Louis? That show that's on
Not
right
yet,
now.
No.
Really fun show. Really fun show. The star of that, let me make sure I get the name right here, is Linda Cardellini. She is playing Mrs. Voorhees. She's playing Pamela Voorhees. This is going to be a prequel series. Now, how well is it going to work? I don't know. I'll be honest. When I thought Bates Motel, remember they did Bates Motel on A&E years ago? Mm-hmm. I remember that, and I was like, how are they going to make this work? Because you're making it like where Norman Bates is like a teenager. Like, clearly he's not murdering people quite yet. How is this going to work? Got to be honest. I loved that show. It was really well done. Like, I really enjoyed Bates Motel. That was one of my favorite shows of that era. I was like, damn, they really did a good job. So, do I have my doubts about Camp Crystal Lake? Sure. How are you going to make a Pamela Voorhees show and no Jason? Are people going to stick around? But hey, I'll stick around and see how it does. But here's the question. Here's the category, Patrick. We are now in 2026, and they did just recently redesign Jason. They put out new photos and toys and whatever else. They are clearly going to be reinvigorating the Friday the 13th franchise. How do we get back into this franchise? And I'm asking this question specifically for 2026 because we've said over and over again, the slasher franchises have been struggling. They're not what they once were. And I'm going to take away an option from you, Patrick, before we start here. If they would have done Friday the 13th as In a Violent Nature, I think that would have been a cool new way in. You're actually with Jason as he's stalking through the woods. That's not an option, though, because they already did In a Violent Nature, which is clearly Friday the 13th without Jason and from a point of view. So how do you get back into Friday the 13th for a modern age?
I first want to say I'm a little bit weary of the new Jason universe. It screams people that don't really love the franchise. They just want to commodify it by making it a quote unquote universe. You know, they said, oh, we've redesigned Jason, and everywhere in all the movies, he's going to have to look like this. And I was like, whoa. Like, that's not how this works. Like, you get a great director in there. You let them design a Jason that fits their story. Like, believe it or not, you make fun of the movies all you want. Every filmmaker was taking it very serious and really wanted to put their stamp on it. You have to do that with these movies. You need to get a director in who has, in my opinion, a 3-story arc. I personally would not connect it to the TV show. I would not even bother with it. I want to see the TV show, and I will watch the TV show. I would not connect it to the TV show. But I would go and I would start the lore all over again. Pamela Voorhees would be a factor. And now that Victor Miller and Sean S. Cunningham, who have been battling for the better part of 20 years, now that they're on nice terms, now Pamela Voorhees and Jason Voorhees can be in the same movie together, which was not the case when they started Camp Crystal Lake. And that's why they started Camp Crystal Lake. That was Victor Miller's project. He owned the rights to Pamela Voorhees. So he said, I'm going to go make a Pamela Voorhees show, because he had the rights to do it. He didn't have the rights to Jason. Sean Cunningham had those. Now they're playing nice. All these years later, they're playing nice. So I would start the movie with a Pamela Voorhees and a Jason Voorhees, build their lore together. build their lore, and then I would move into a 2-story arc that connects from the original murders on through to an ending. And Damon, I actually have a pretty deep idea, and I may have even told it to you. But I'm not going to give it away here because I might one day do it. Even if I never direct Friday the 13th, I may do this idea particularly. So I won't spoil it here. But I think that's what you do. I think you kickstart the lore again. There's a whole generation of Gen Zers who weren't even babies when this came out. So they're going to be like, Jason, what? What about it? I don't know. It's like some movie on the rack. I don't know anything about it. So start the lore over, get it going again, build the legend that is Jason, and then go to town.
So my idea, part of my problem when they redid the Halloween series, and my biggest issue with 2018's Halloween was like they didn't actually make it clear. Like Michael Myers had no reason to go after Laurie. It still bugs me to this day. Like what was a really, really good movie. My one biggest problem with that movie is like they took away the brother angle, which was only injected into part 2 so they could do a sequel. John Carpenter never intended for Laurie and Michael to be brother and sister, but it kind of became part of the lore, part of the iconic part of Halloween was that they are brother and sister. And by making them brother and sister in Halloween H2O, it gave a reason for Michael to continue coming after Laurie. When they took that away in 2018, I was like, so the doctor just drops him off at her house and she goes on, like, it's a really dumb way to get back into it. Like he never really went after Laurie. So you're just like, okay, so why is Laurie even in this? Like it was part of my problem. With Friday the 13th, they always centered around, Jason drowned as a child and his mother, tries to avenge him and then he comes back from a watery grave or he never died. What, however version you want to take it, and he comes back to avenge his mother's death and he's killing camp counselors who remind him of the people who killed his mother. That's kind of the general idea. Now, I've actually complained when we did another Friday the 13th movie, I can't remember which one it was, I said, is Jason like a zombie? Like, is he just a mindless zombie just going around killing people? Like, he doesn't stop to eat or shit. He just walks around hacking people to death. Like, is that who he is? So here's my idea. You start the movie with a traditional kind of Pamela Voorhees open. You do a cold open, like a 20-minute open like they do in this movie, where Pamela is like totally psychic, but totally psychotic. But Jason's still around. Like he's still a kid, but she's already like Looney Tunes. And then Jason almost drowns. He doesn't die. He almost drowns. But when he comes out of the water, he's basically not brain dead, but he's very, very like... He's been, deprived
brain
of
damaged.
oxygen.
Yeah.
Brain damaged, very brain damaged. And so Pamela goes on a killing spree to avenge like what happened to her son, but he's not dead. And then the last killing happens, which is, we see her fighting with a camp counselor or whatever, and then we just kind of cut to black. And then we pick up 20 years later. And Jason is now a serial killer, more or less. He puts on a mask or a bag. I always liked the baghead Jason, but, mask, whatever. And now new people are coming in, he's killing people, and it basically kind of turns into that. But the twist in my twist is this. Pamela Voorhees is still around. She's telling Jason to go do this. She's like, go kill this person, go do this. So we actually have a voice telling, and I know they do this a little bit in the movies where he hears a voice in his head, but we're actually going to physically see Pamela Voorhees be like, Jason, go get them. And we're going to have all these interactions with Pamela Voorhees and Jason. And the big twist, here's my big twist at the ending. Pamela Voorhees is dead. She's been dead this entire time. So it's her spirit. He's just been imagining his mother telling him what to do, very much like what is in Psycho or other movies like that. That would be my twist, is like, we think she's like basically ordering, and they could have some version where like she's in a wheelchair or she's like invalid, where she's ordering him around. But like in reality, she's never been there. He's always been imagining that she was there. She actually did die in 1983 or whatever the original story started. So my point is like my twist is that Pamela has a voice, so Jason kind of has a voice, because clearly Jason doesn't talk in any of these movies, and I think that, like much like Michael Myers, you can only go so far with the mindless, faceless killer, which is why Freddy always appealed to me, because he had a little bit more personality. Pamela being like the voice in his head saying, go kill, do this, kill this person. And you think she's alive because we see him interacting, like bringing her dinner or whatever. And then the big twist at the end is he's always been talking to a dead person. Maybe they bring back just the fucking head like they did in part 2 where he's got like the shrine built to her. I think that'd be a cool. Then you get a voice to Jason. You get to hear her commanding him and interacting, and almost like an abusive relationship in a way, where she's like, "Go do this for me, Jason," and then
Yeah.
obviously, the end, you find out she's been dead this entire time.
Yeah, and that gives the fans an understanding of how he works. In that,
Yeah.
kind of like how they did with, well, I don't want to spoil that movie if people haven't seen it. There's some explanation in the Bone Temple for how things work for the infected. So it's kind of a way to show how Jason works in Friday the 13th.
Yeah, just like I said, it doesn't need a deep plot, just a little plot, and I think that would be enough plot to kind of hook people in a different way. Patrick, last category, is it Friday? I think this is a pretty easy category to answer. So when it comes to the 2009 remake, is it Friday?
Oh yeah, Damon. I mean, listen, they had the right people in place to truly homage this thing, and not just homage it, but celebrate it. It really felt like a celebration of the entire franchise, while still very much having its own ideas and its own momentum, and it wasn't trying to latch on to any of the old ideas other than just that basic lore, which is, I'm here to avenge my mother, and you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, pal, because anybody who gets near her head is going to have their head removed. They don't stray from that. They deliver it as best they can in really kind of a way that I still haven't seen to this day, that still feels like the old movies while still feeling fresh and updated. I still think this movie is kind of evergreen.
I said this earlier, and I know this always sounds like a backhanded compliment, but this is not a great movie, but it's a great Friday the 13th movie. It works really, really well as a Friday the 13th movie. And by the way, I don't need it to be a great movie. I don't watch Friday the 13th thinking, man, I cannot wait to see Derek Mears on stage accepting his Oscar. That's not why I watch these movies. Nobody does it. If you do, you got a really distorted view of what these movies are. It works for what it is. Is it cheesy at moments? Is it, oversexed for no reason? We just get to watch two people go to Pound Town because they wanted to go to Pound Town, whatever, with no repercussions for going to Pound Town? Sure, but it works. And the characters, while these friends clearly don't even like each other, you give them a reason to die or want to see them die. You give us a little bit of a plot, which is a kind of a rarity in a Friday the 13th movie. You give us a really cool Jason. You give us some really cool kills, and you've won. That's all you really have to do. And I marvel at how some of the other Jason movies fail to accomplish that. Jason Takes Manhattan, that happens on a fucking boat instead of actually in Manhattan. Or Jason X, which is, I don't care. Everyone can love whatever they love. I think that movie's terrible. And for Jason Goes to Hell is probably the worst of them all. How you mess that up, I'll never know. You can inject some fun new realities like Part 7, where you give us a telekinetic final girl. Okay, cool. A little different twist on the whole supernatural thing. But hey, Jason's an unstoppable, unkillable, giant hulking zombie. So give us a telekinetic girl, sure. But yeah, they understood the assignment. They knew what they were making, and they didn't fuck it up. I know that sounds like a low bar to clear, Patrick, but they didn't fuck it up.
They didn't fuck it up. In fact, I think they excelled at it. I think they made legitimately one of the better Friday the 13th movies.
Yeah, and actually still very much beloved. I think this is now it didn't, you're right, it didn't do well. It made money, but it fell off hard in the theaters. But I feel like this is one of those movies, as time has passed, people have come to appreciate it more and more. Unlike the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which I wish they'd burn and never show to anyone ever again.
I wish I'd never seen it. Genuinely one of those movies I just regret watching.
Funny story. I was scrolling through TikTok today, and Jackie Earle Haley popped up on my timeline. I was like, oh, no.
Your favorite Freddy.
Yeah. I like Jackie Earle Haley, not as Freddy
I do
Krueger.
too.
Yeah, I feel bad. Patrick, that is our episode for this week. Obviously, we appreciate everyone to kind of send us out messages saying, why are you not doing Friday the 13th on Friday the 13th? Well, we got to it just a little bit late, but hey, we're here. And here is the Friday the 13th remake, so hopefully you enjoyed that. Obviously, want to say a big thank you to everyone that tunes in the show. Make sure you check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Of course, over on our website, rewindofthelivingdead.com, and over on YouTube, just search Rewind of the Living Dead. You'll find us over there. And do not forget to subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/rewindoflivingdead. You get early access to these episodes. You get bonus episodes like our Film Core podcast. We're going to be reviewing Project Hail Mary soon, so stay tuned for that. We reviewed Superman. We did Heat. We did the Kill Bill, the whole bloody affair. And I think it's pretty safe to say our next TV review will be Camp Crystal Lake. I feel like that's a safe one. We can do our recaps on Patreon.
Oh, yes. I can't wait to get into that, even if I hate it. I'm just excited to be able to give the patrons that because I will be watching.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. So patreon.com/Rewind the Living Dead. If you got questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review, your memories of seeing the 2009 Friday the 13th for the first time, I'd love to hear from you guys. Hit us up on email anytime, rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That is rot, livingdead@gmail.com. Or hit us up on social media. We are on Twitter/X, Facebook, and Instagram. Once again, just search Rewind of the Living Dead and you'll find us over there. And you can also find us on our own personal social media channels. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
And as always, I want to say a big thank you to everyone that tunes in the show each and every week. We'll be back next week with another edition of Rewind of the Living Dead. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you then.